Welcome to Wood and Iron, the podcast for loggers by loggers. We dig into the real stories, hard-earned lessons, and iron-sharpened wisdom that keep the wood industry moving. I'm Blake Manley with the Western Forestry and Conservation Association.
And I'm Jared Schrader with the Wisconsin Forestry Center. Together, we bring you the voices of the people who live and breathe timber. From the forest floor to the mill yard door, from chainsaws to forwarders, we're talking shop, celebrating the craft and tackling the issues shaping forestry today.
So grab your coffee, fire up your equipment, and settle in. This is Wood and Iron. Let's get to work. Big thanks today for our sponsor, Manly Jobs, promotional educational material for all groups. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of Wood and Iron, our logger podcast that really brings professionals that are actually doing the job to your airways. And we can't wait for this one today. Now, I'm super excited about this one, Jared, because, we've talked to other people in the past and we've done a lot with loggers and engagement and what we do in our professional lives and all that. But it's rare that we get to have one come and kind of share their story with us in this way. And I'm excited. I'm excited because although our listeners won't be able to see this, we know Matt is actually in the woods and he has called in to us because, like many of you listening to this, you don't have time to go to a studio to record a podcast. You're out there cruising timber, you're out there logging, you're out there doing whatever you're doing. And Matt's doing that today and has been able to get to wherever you are, Matt. Your image looks great. So I'm super excited by this, Jared. How about you?
I am also really excited. I love the fact, Matt, that you, as a consulting forester and a part-time logger, you really sort of bridge the gap between the Wisconsin Forestry Center's Silvacast and this new podcast, Wood and Iron. So, and as a small business owner, I think you're going to provide a very relatable perspective to the issues that people are facing in the woods. So, yeah, like Blake said, I'm really excited to bring your perspective from the woods to their ears.
Hey, welcome, Matt. Why don't we just get started and kind of give us a little background, what you do on your day-to-day, what things look like, and why you love doing what you're doing.
Today, things look cold. It was below zero this morning, but it's good for freezing down roads. It's like 12 degrees right now. I don't know how warm it is in my truck, but this is my native habitat. So this is where I felt comfortable calling you from. But I am a bit of a seek out the audience and go knock on a door. So, I might be driving down Highway 51 to Jared's office in Stevens Point. So just know that. I'll blitz you.
Good. So every day looks a little different for you. What's a typical day look like for Matt, both as the logger side and maybe just a typical week?
There really isn't anything typical. And that's what I love about it. There really hasn't been a ton of logging in the last year. I did get a battery-powered chainsaw, and as much as two-stroke and bar oil really get me jacked. At least you still get the bar oil with the battery saw, but the thing is super handy for, a month ago I had to knock down a jack pine tree across the woods road and make a poor man's gate because I didn't have a gate and a post hole digger handy that day and a bag of Quickcretes. That battery saw is super slick, so definitely not making any commercial loads or anything, but the logging that I have done as a part of my business and am still open to really comes about as in the course of my forestry clientele. In this part of the world where I'm at, we have a lot of second homes or seasonal homes, absentee landowners that, they're close enough to where they can spend the weekend or most weekends or part of a week there. So they have a house on a bigger lake lot and aesthetics are really important, but, they own some hunting land or even investment woodlands. And that's what they hired me initially for, but then, my goal is to build really good long-term relationships and be not just a plan writer, but also helping to implement the timber sale. And then in the course of these long-term relationships and building trust with people, they start asking you forest health questions and, hey, I've got these trees between my cabin and the lake. They're either dying or I want a better view. And around here, we have shoreland zoning regulations at the county level, and one of the counties I practice in actually calls out logging and forest practices in their shoreland zoning. So, and we just have tons of water around here. So, it's a thing you got to be cognizant of. And obviously, we're all, we utilize that resource and recreate on it ourselves. So you want to do right by it. But the small scale logging that I have done is kind of non-commercial in that regard. If there's enough wood to put up a load, then, I'll call contract truckers that I work with and see if there's a way to actually move it into the marketplace or, help that landowner sell it as firewood, whatever the case may be. But, all those things take time and money, and I'm just really fortunate to have good relationships with landowners and clients that give me that opportunity.
So like you seem pretty well connected already. Like how did you get into this business in the first place?
Well, I grew up on a small woodlot. My parents bought some land and wanted to move out there at some point. So, we prefabbed a cabin, which is now their house, on a family friend's farm, and then trucked it up there and put it together ourselves. Kind of always had the rugged individualism experience and one family's conservation ethic, just trying to be close to the land and get their chunk of it and take good care of it. That was my experience growing up. My older brother was in forestry school when I was, in middle school and high school. And so I got to see him go through, the youth conservation corps. That was a thing up until the early 90s here in Wisconsin. I really looked up to him and as an example of, man, he's building this life for himself, cruising timber, working in the woods. And, mom and dad on the weekends are letting us run around the back 40 with a hatchet and, cut down dead and dying wood and put up firewood. So that was my first kind of exposure to it. And then, because my brother was getting into the practice of forestry, I got to see what that was actually like. So, I've had the good fortune to know that I wanted to be around woods work a long time. I mentioned the youth conservation corps. Like our dad went through that in the late 60s and two of his brothers as well. So we have this, family legacy and connection of like sweat equity and sawdust, and it's not necessarily commercial logging, but just real close to woodlot management and what small landowners are into. So, and then I went to forestry school at Michigan Tech, had just the best experience there, probably had more fun than the average college student. And I have just a ton of great memories, a ton of great connections to folks up there. So going through school up there, I got a chance to work in consulting forestry for a shop and had just a really close relationship with the business owner there, and got to see and do some really cool stuff that I'm grateful for because it's been impactful all the way through my career. And then got on with a pulp and paper mill down here north central Wisconsin right out of college, and have had a lot of connection to the legacy pulp mill land bases. And that's kind of, I have stayed in touch with landowners that were buying chunks of those land bases and kind of built a business niche around, really keeping those working lands working. There's a lot of fulfillment in that.
So do you find your sort of leg in two worlds, right? So you have some of that logging experience, so you're trained as a forester. Does that kind of help you speak to both communities a little more effectively? So you know how to speak the logger language, you know how to speak the forester language?
I think so. And I guess the deeper I get into my career, the more I realize there really isn't, or at least there shouldn't be, a
Mhm.
language barrier. I mean, we're all on the same team, getting to the same place together. So I I guess I can see where either side or angle has maybe brought their own agenda to the team goal and let it become separate silos or languages. And I guess at the end of the day, I figured out that I like people and am more of a people person than I ever realized. So, I don't really categorize loggers, foresters, landowners. I see us all as, people that love forests, people that love the resource, and just we all have different perspectives and tools and skills to bring to the game, and that's kind of what I love about it. You know,
Yeah.
it, it's like building a football team. I mean, you might you might have a 240-pound safety that really ought to be a linebacker, you know, or a real skinny linebacker that he could put his hand on the ground and be your third down DN. So you just we all have our own skills.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that perspective.
You don't need 8 quarterbacks on the field at one time either, right?
Right.
Now,
I don't
the
know
only
if you need one quarterback at a time on the field. We could run 32 belly option all day, every day, as far as I'm concerned.
I coach junior high football. I love that. Love it. Matt, one of the things you were saying was the diversification. Like how diverse you have become with what you do. Do you see that as a pattern in forestry in general, but specifically in logging? Do you see that as a pattern?
Yes and no. I mean, there are some really awesome specialists that have their costs and their revenues figured out for what works, and they lean into that now more than ever. And with so much wood on the market around here, it allows specialists to just keep doing the one thing that really works well. But on the flip side, yeah, I mean, some close family friends of mine that they grew up logging with their dad and have now, basically the brothers taken over dad's company, and each brother has his own role and is also an officer of the brothers corporation, so to speak. But yeah, just seeing those guys diversify in the last 5 years. I mean, they still do that which has always worked, and they'll ride that pony as long as they can, but they're so adept at what's the next thing coming. How can we slide into how can we take our traditional knowledge of cutting and skidding and trucking wood and push that into all of these other like infrastructure projects or road construction projects. That's another thing. I mean, just getting civil engineers to not see trees as a burden in the way of building the bridge. It's like, hey, cut those and ship them to the pulp mill 75 miles down the road. They've got to use. So yeah, I think I see both aspects there.
Is that trainable? Are you able to like train that sort of diverse thought pattern, or do you think that's sort of like an ingrained type thing?
Can you train math? Like, can you teach math?
You're asking the wrong person on that one.
I guess I was not always very good at math, but I've definitely gotten better because when you figure out, hey, I've got to make money to put food on the table and survive in this business, you get better at doing your books, you get better at doing math. So yes, I do think that element of it is coachable, and that's what really can take somebody from, nah, that's a bad idea, I'm never going to do that, to here's the numbers, you can do that. I think math speaks volumes, and yes, it can teach old dogs new tricks.
And I see that here too. Like I see exactly what you're talking about, and obviously you're Great Lakes area and very familiar with that, but it's no different here on the West Coast. Like the guys that are really good at high lead, right? Skyline logging. Okay, they've kind of leaned into that, and that's where they stay, right? And they're, hey, this is what we're going to be good at. But I see so many of the mid-size or very large companies that are diversifying. They're grabbing market share in a different way because they have to, or because it's more, we get breakup in a lot of places around here. You guys get breakup, when logging's not that great. And the guys have started finding ways to stay busy during those times that previously they just took the 3 months off, right? They worked on equipment or did something, but now they've diversified to try to, you know, bridge that gap, so to speak.
I've also seen, very long tenured family logging businesses make the hard decision that the math isn't right for them in logging, but they're still doing something, you know, but they've taken the resources out of logging and put the capital into something else that people need, So I think at our core, like, we're just kind of a individualistic survivalist type bunch where, we want to provide for our families, we want to provide for our neighbors. So, and we're willing to work harder than, maybe a lot of folks or the average to do that, to put wood into people's homes. I mean, that's just a very like core visceral commonality we have.
And that doesn't change, does it, Jared? No matter where you're at, I think literally what Matt just said is the number one thing about a logger forester, but we're speaking specifically on the loggers. They are willing to outwork you.
Yeah.
And that period. They are going to strive to outwork you no matter what it is. I love that. Hey, I love having logger kids on my football team because they know.
Yeah.
Our high school hockey coach like really leans into the blue collar work ethic, Northwoods kids thing. And they actually, a few years ago when he started as the coach, I gave him a empty lunch pail and a hard hat, as kind of dented up and hardly used, gave it to him. And that's like the post game thing that they hand out, for our high school team. That's the hard hat lunch pail award. So, it's alive and well, at least here. So
Love it. Love it.
That's awesome. So from a small business perspective, so we talked a little bit about that agility, right? Like being able to jump from market to market to be able to maximize your profits to do the math. What are some of the problems that you've encountered on a small scale that you really are having a hard time finding clear answers to?
health insurance is definitely the elephant in the room, especially being self-employed owner operator. Like everybody else in similar boots, that's a common conversation. It can be in patterns. I mean, I've experienced that pattern where I've had a job that comes with that. Then, we make a decision as a family to do something else, or my wife carried us on her insurance. That's the thing I see with a lot of folks that I cross paths in the woods. Like your health insurance option is not the same every year, and it might change a couple, three times during the year.
And then I look at like not just health insurance, which is super important. And, for a lot of years, logging didn't have any insurance at all, right? Health insurance wise. But here in North Idaho, the other problem a lot of loggers are having is insurance, period.
Yeah.
Being able to insure their equipment and insure that, like, it's a high risk thing, and those insurance premiums are going up. Is it similar over there?
Yeah, it is. Or you accept being underinsured. And I mean, that how healthy is that for long periods? You're gambling there.
Yeah, I was at a safety conference, I guess it was last spring, maybe 2 springs ago. And one of the graphics they were showing was it was all about, well, this portion of it was on the insurance and stuff like that. And one of the graphics they showed was the amount of equipment that we've lost due to fire or something like that that was insured, and how expensive one piece of machinery is these days. So when that all jumped up, now all the premiums went up across the board. And so they were talking about how this is not just a you problem, this is an us problem. You have to take care of your equipment in such a way so that we all don't pay higher premiums because insurance is where it is. And that's a hard reality again, you were talking about it. We're all connected, we're all pieced together, but boy, it's a hard reality to know that my insurance is going to be influenced by Jared's equipment burning up.
Yeah. This is a little bit of a downer subject. So if I could put like a more positive spin to pull us out of the depths of despair here. One thing that I am seeing in Wisconsin, that in the Lake States in general, that as a kid that grew up, within eyesight of agriculture, I think forestry, we could learn a lot from the agriculture community and in marketing. I mean, the general public really looks with nostalgia at, the rolling hills of the driftless country and the red barns. That is an altered landscape. So, why our altered landscapes of a fresh clear cut, which I think are just beautiful, by the way, why we get the hairy finger, that's our own fault because we haven't marketed that we bring you things that you need. Farmers have done a yeoman's job at that, obviously, and farmers have cooperated, even though they're competitors. Seeing the timber professionals cooperative form up here is pretty energizing. It's neat to see that idea finally catch on and take root. It's really awesome that Wisconsin gets to say, it is home to the first of its kind logger trucker cooperative. And, I think the sky is really the limit on that idea growing. But certainly just look down the road at the farmers. They've been doing that for a long, long time with good success. So why not? Why not in our industry?
Yeah, and that success of the farmers, it's not one of these things where one day they just started doing it and it was successful, right? It started 100 years ago with FFA being created,
Yeah.
right? They have in classrooms, they learn ag marketing, right? Well, part of ag marketing today, I've sat in those classrooms, right? Part of ag marketing today is the social media and the positive messaging and all of that. It's not just the numbers and the math, they have started doing that in the classroom. I would love to see us do forestry marketing in a high school classroom, right? And enjoy like the coolness. Like for us, we're geeks. Like I get it, right? But I mean, for those of our listeners out there, it's rare that forestry marketing is talked about in the way that Matt's talking about, agriculture. And that's positive that you guys have something going. I love that.
Well, think about, I think that one of the foundations for that, though, is if you look at the Dust Bowl was very apparent, right? That things were not being done correctly. And then from that point on, we had that big switch in the marketing and everything was, things were redesigned. Is forestry having its Dust Bowl period now with all the forest fires? Maybe it is. Maybe this is the jumping off point where we can start saying, look, harvest is super important to keep these fires from happening, to keep these forests healthy, to keep habitats healthy. Maybe this is our moment.
Sign me up. I'm here for it.
I like that. Hey, and I think very possible, Jared, that you are onto something there because the conversation with the common Joe and Jill of the world about forestry has changed over the last 10 years. I see it all the time. Now, you always have the people on the fringes, right? But I see it with the common folk that are just walking down the road and they hate breathing the smoke. You guys had it this year. We have it almost every year. They're tired of that. They know it's unhealthy. I can't wait for the science papers to come out to say how unhealthy it is. There's your assignment, Jared. You're at the university. Come on now. Uh, I'm not anymore. I'm not a university guy. So, but you look at that. The science is out there. They just got to be able to come out with it. But maybe this is our moment. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
If it is, I hope we seize the opportunity. We've probably had a few other close encounters that could have been the moment. Could we have done a better job coming out of the timber wars, like articulating forest science and how that connects to forest operations? Maybe I'm not gonna look back with regret or disdain and say this should have been done differently, but you know we're not as far along as the ag community in the eyes of the general public. So how do we get there? How do we keep running downhill towards real progress? So, and I do think it comes with a lot better advocacy and out front communication. Like I was having this conversation this morning because, the snowmobile trails opened right here in our local 2-county area, 8 a.m. and at noon this morning. And naturally, like the hospitality, the recreational industries are super jacked up about that. But we've got town roads that haven't been plowed in 3 snowfalls because those public roads are being allowed to serve snowmobile trails more so than the logging jobs that are set to fire up here pretty quick. Or pickup trucks like mine been going in and out of woods roads trying to freeze them down, and I'm in 4-wheel drive on a town road that every other day of the year it's collecting, or every day of the year it's collecting gas tax, right? So it's supposed to be serving a public transportation need, not this secondary recreational need. And this is a really difficult thing to talk about, like the priority level or order of priorities, and what feeds what. Like, I think we do need to have that conversation again, because you go to parts of Wisconsin for sure where ag is the big ticket player. Like, yeah, there's 20 minutes of cars lined up behind Grandpa's plow because Grandpa's plow is paying the taxes to put pavement on that road, so that's how it is. But when forestry is this every so often harvest rather than an every year harvest, we have the tendency to like fall off the shadows, or fall off the stage and into the shadows. And if we're not there in the public dialogue more often, like every day kind of often, they forget about us. And we can't blame the audience because we set the mic down and walked away.
And why are the people going to the North Woods to snowmobile? Because it's fun to drive through the forest. It's fun to ride, when you got trees.
Absolutely.
And so those are incredibly interconnected industries.
Yeah. You can't have snowmobile trails without a logging job to clear the path, right? But so then, like, there's this irony of a disdain for logging from the seat of your snow machine. Like, it's on us to do a better job communicating that interconnectedness for sure.
Yeah.
Support for this podcast comes from the Western Forestry and Conservation Association. For over 100 years, WFCA has delivered trusted forestry education, professional development, and workforce leadership across the region. Learn more at westernforestry.org. Matt, I'm on TikTok. Like, don't judge. Like, it's all part of the media, right? Though where are the people, right? That's the way I look at it. I know there's a lot of people that hate it, and that's fine, hate it. but the people are there. So my most popular TikTok of 2025 is going to be a 30-second shot, and it's me making a recording of a ski resort and saying we're okay with these vertical clear cuts because that's what they are, but we're not okay with a very smart, strategically planned clear cut in your backyard for fire prevention, or just anything for fire prevention. We throw them into court immediately. Don't want to be negative, but what you're saying is the same thing. Like your snowmobile trails, they were made by someone cutting down the trees, harvesting them, taking them somewhere. The roads to get there, same thing. Why were the roads originally put there? Typically in the North Woods, in the high country, stuff like that. It's because they were logging there, right? They weren't going on a sightseeing tour. So I see the same connection, and I think there's just a disconnect to it. And people on the comments on that TikTok are just wild because some of them don't get it. Some of them 100% do get it, and that's the funniest ones for me. But it's the same. Again, Matt, it's what you're talking about. Jared, it's what you're talking about, right? There's a disconnect. Typically, foresters, loggers, people that are in our industry, they love the woods, they love to recreate, they love all those things, and they don't love to talk about it with other people. They don't love being on TV, being on social media. They don't love, that notoriety. They don't want that. But we have to have it now. There's no choice. So anybody listening to this, realize a 15-second Instagram post of you doing something in the woods, constructive and good, is worth its weight in gold. It really is.
Yeah, amen. I won't get too preachy here, but I think we all have that like in us and capacity to share the gospel of good forestry. Like, you don't have to be preaching it, but if and when somebody asks, friend, neighbor, foe, whatever they may be, like that's your opportunity to share that message. It doesn't have to be long and drawn out, and no, you don't have to, get a bunch of likes or angry comments on it, but just be willing to, rep the flag of what we do, because it's good work, it's fulfilling work. We wouldn't be doing it, and it wouldn't be such a brouhaha every time we all get together and tell fun stories of working in the woods and life. Like, we're so connected, as people in this industry. Like, let's share a little bit of that with the rest of the world, so maybe we stop taking so many shots.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Obviously, I'm in it, and I believe in it. Why are we doing this podcast? It's yes, it's for loggers and all that, but it's also just more exposure to the good that is in the industry. It's great. I had somebody at a conference, major conference. He was up on main stage. He's talking about being in social media, and he said, the amount of people watching, and it's not just social media. It's anytime you get to talk about this. I'm in social media, so I'm kind of hyper focused on that. He said, don't be frustrated if somebody, you only got 200 likes, you only got, or 200 views or 800 views or something like that. He said, if the message is important, 800 people just heard an important message. And he said, yes, everyone goes crazy with the ones that get 500,000, a million, whatever views. But if it's an important message and 500 people heard that important message, you won the day.
Yeah. Yeah. Quality over quantity, I think.
Yeah. Jared is quality over quantity. Don't you think so, Matt?
Appreciate that. So, kind of bring things back to the sort of small business perspective. And I think we touched on this a little bit. But Matt, what would you say is what's your secret to how you're continuing to be successful in a very challenging field?
There's really no secret. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So, whatever it is, if it's your margin, a ton of wood, plots crews, you got to be able to know your costs of that effort relative to the value of the output. You have to be able to defend and articulate your value proposition to whomever your customer or client is. So that's not a secret. I mean, anybody that is still in business knows that to some extent and is probably putting some effort on improving that, or a new way to look at the numbers, or a new tool to make the numbers better. So it's just a pursuit of making the tackle, so to speak, constant.
I don't think there's enough training for loggers on just how to do an Excel spreadsheet. You know, and I don't want to be too simple, but my family company, I was the guy doing the Excel spreadsheets. Now my little brother could do it too, to a certain extent. Dad definitely couldn't do an Excel spreadsheet, and that's not any knock on my dad. It's just flat out. It's so quick to be able to run numbers and be able to manipulate your numbers, and it's time saver. Jared, when we talk about all the time, maybe what kind of trainings does a logger now? Would they actually go to that training? You'd have to sugarcoat it in some way, Matt. I don't know, but you're right about the numbers.
That's the cool thing about living on this planet in 2025. Like, there's never been more accessible information than any point in history. So the options and the opportunities are out there, and it's simply a matter of taking advantage of what's available. So I've taken a whole bunch of continuing education, and frankly, if anybody's short on credits, I've got enough to sell back to the grid. I have a surplus, so give me a shout. But you can take them in your pickup, you can take them in your machine, you can take them listening on the headset when you're sitting on the couch reading the paper at night. Like, the options are there. You just have to have the drive to want to pick it up and apply it. So everything is at our fingertips now.
Well, it's like the same problem I saw back when I was teaching high school, right? If you wanted to see the light die behind a student's eyes, all you had to do is say the word math and they're done, right? Like, and I think the problem is because the math that they are being taught is not being applied to something that they can see the value in. So if they were able to see like, no, this is the math you're going to be doing running a business, and it's valuable and it's not that complicated, that might help people along and not sort of have this generalized fear of the content area.
That was me in a nutshell, Jared. Terrible at math, and had to take more math in college than I probably should have. But when it comes right down to it, you see how it influences and applies to the thing that you love the most, right? So you force yourself to figure it out. And if you want to succeed, you force yourself to apply it. So I think that's the case with any kind of business continuing ed that's available. Like, all people have to do is ask, and there's just limitless options out there. I've been in some really cool classes that are they're either short courses like 2 weeks long, or I did a 6 month intensive like immersion course that met once a week, and it had homework in between, and it brought together people from all over the country, different segments of the forest products industry. It was awesome to like connect over some similar themes, and then everybody's weaving in like their local flair on it. That kind of option was really good for a lot of us owner operators, because you spend time by yourself most of the day, and you either don't want to talk about certain things with your family, or you don't have the time. So, like, to have a couple hours a week dedicated space to, basically gelling with other folks in the same boots as you, like, that is super valuable. So, I just can't say enough. Like, the options are out there. Just put your hand up and say, sign me up.
Hey, one of the things you said that maybe, as we wrap up a little bit, but maybe the common person doesn't know. Now, loggers that are listening to the podcast, they know this. It doesn't matter where you're from, but the common person, they don't know about the continuing education requirements. Matt, can you just summarize that? And you don't have to put any certain state spin on it, because we have continuing education here in Idaho. Washington has it. Oregon has it. California has it. Wisconsin obviously has it. What is it in a nutshell? What is the continuing education requirements, and why are they in place?
That is a really big nutshell, Blake.
That was a hardball question rather than the softball questions I was supposed to be asking. So that's on me.
It's a good thing I'm ahead in the pitch count, because I stood by and let that one go right past. Continuing education, in some instances, it's the market's barrier to entry. Like, you have to pursue continuing education either to maintain a required license or a voluntary license, or your ability to sell product into a certified marketplace. Or I guess I shouldn't bring capital C certification into this conversation just yet, because that's more than just a rabbit hole. That's a thing. But basically, we all get some baseline education, whether it's formal 4-year college degree, a 2-year technical degree, or school of hard knocks. You have all these different spots in our industry where a baseline education is required. So then, to stay in the industry and to prove our social license to practice forestry, continuing education is a huge component of that, because we have to prove to the public that we're not just resting on our laurels of having done the baseline, but we see that the world turns, and we're trying to be a part of it and get better all the time. So I don't know, did I hit it? Is that okay?
Absolutely. It's a single, man. You're on base.
That was okay, good. Because I felt like that was choked up. That was a little bit of an infield single, maybe.
Yeah, but you're fast, right? You get there quick. Hey, I would say the only thing I would add to that is a lot of people talk all the time that this is the way it's always been done, and loggers are, this is the way their grandpa was doing it, and so this is the way they keep doing it. There's so much technology and so many new laws, new research, and loggers, foresters, everybody, they have to get some of that new stuff every single year. They go to conferences. They're getting credit hours, all kinds of different ways. And while some of them, it's no different than anybody doing continuing education. Sometimes that applies to you more than others, but loggers are required. It is state law in the state of Oregon to get a certain amount of credits to be able to do your job. And that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. And the state of Wisconsin and the state of Idaho and the state of, we can keep going on that.
Of course, being two former educators,
Right.
requiring more education never sounds that bad to us.
I'm a little bit of a halftime educator. And actually education is where I've learned that I'm more of a people person than I ever thought I was, because I had the really good opportunity to be mentored by a professional forester that I look up to, and more than just forestry, I mean, in life and faith in general. But he gave me a plug at our land grant university has a research station here locally, and he gave me a plug to be the practitioner coming in and showing GIS, showing how to operate forestry tools. And a couple of years of being a guest in this class, when he retired and moved out west, he suggested to the university that they pick me up as the code teacher for this class. And so I've been doing that every winter the past 7-8 winters, and I'm pretty sure I'm the one that has the most fun in that class, because I get to just it's a passion project for me. I get to come in at 8 o'clock in the morning when these kids are like not ready for a hurricane of forestry and just like spew everything that's great about it. So, I really love sharing what, my passion with these students, and hopefully they catch on and stick in this industry. I've got to like I've got to pump the brakes a little bit. Sometimes I get so excited, like interacting with students and being like, you signed up for this class. I'm so glad you're here. Like, thanks for coming. And we're gonna see and do some really cool stuff out in the woods. So buckle up. But I do really enjoy listening to you guys. And, no joke, I spend a lot of time listening to podcasts and pretty much caught up on manly jobs, and excited to see where wood and iron goes.
Yeah.
Community outreach is another, aspect of education. Call it extension, whatever you want. But I think that's back to that, like sharing the gospel of good forestry that any one of us can do. It doesn't have to be a formal event, but it's super cool when a busload of retirees shows up on a logging job, and they bring their open hearts and minds, and they're asking some pretty neat questions about logging. And then, if you've been around it a long enough time, the questions might seem kind of like, or the answers to the questions might seem rudimentary, but to people that aren't exposed to it day in and day out, it can be life changing when you actually like open them up to that. So it's really cool. It's impactful.
Yeah, it is. My favorite part of education is the light bulb. And the
Yeah.
light bulb moment, and you never know where it's going to come. And that could be high school, that could be college, that could be like you're talking about professional or retirees or wherever that's at. When you see the light bulb, right, come on, it cuts right to you. It really does.
You mentioned FFA, Blake. I mean, I gotta give some props to FFA. Like, I was lucky to be exposed to forestry from a real young age, but in high school I had field and forest conservation, and it was, one of the best, most influential classes I had. And, just getting into FFA in high school and going all the way through state degree and going to national convention, like, it is not just future farmers of America. There is a spot there for kids that want to work in the woods, and, career development events, extemporaneous speaking events, like those are all tools that we can apply to this trade that we love so much, that will really help get people more excited about forestry, I don't want to say more accepting of forestry, because they're already accepting it, right? They consume the products and services that we make every day, but it'd be neat to see them more excited about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, man, I'm on the national committee for FFA forestry.
Oh,
And
sweet.
so I keep trying to throw a little extra this is and that's in there. And because I think there's one way to get people more excited about it, and that is some of the technology and some of the stuff that we have in forestry never hits the classroom. And I keep seeing some of the cool stuff you work with every single day. And we need to get that in front of more kids.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we had a skills camp this last summer, and one of our professors was able to bring out the LiDAR equipped drone that you just program the path and up it goes and takes off and starts taking imagery. And the students were just amazed by that. I thought that was really cool.
Can Stevens Point like subcontract that out? Like, rather than put me out of business, can I just like hire it for a few projects?
And that's we could go on and on about that, but I think some of the technology, the LiDAR, heck, even the computers in a processor. Processor grabs a log and it's reading. It's got 3 lasers, 4 lasers, whatever it is. It's reading all kinds of different things and keeping all that. And we just don't show that to enough young people. I'm always on that kick. We need to show it more. Maybe that contest at nationals isn't the place, right? But just through the different things we can do with them, the LiDAR's cool. There's so much technology. Just the laser that we use to measure trees. Awesome.
Yeah.
On that note, Matt, we really appreciate you taking the time out of your work week to be with us, to help engage more people. We're trying to find different mediums these days. I believe in this. I believe this is one of those ways, and I sure appreciate you coming on today.
No, thank you guys. Really appreciate you having me. It means a lot to get to be a part of the conversation. So thank you.
Definitely happy to have you. This is fantastic.
We appreciate everybody listening and being on, and that is Wood and Iron episode with Matt. That's going to wrap up this episode of Wood and Iron, the podcast for loggers by loggers. Big thanks for joining us out here in the woods in the air today. We appreciate you making us part of your day.
And be sure to subscribe and share. And more importantly, send us questions and stories. We want to hear from the people who keep this industry running.
So until next time, stay safe, stay sharp, and keep the woods working.
Wood and Iron is brought to you by the Wisconsin Forestry Center. The WFC is dedicated to promoting vibrant, sustainable forests and forest-based economies. Learn more at uwsp.edu/WFC. Special thanks to those that brought Wood and Iron from the studio to the cab. Editor Joe Rogers, producer Susan Barrett, and theme music by Paul Frater, Todd Hornick, and Sammy Mead.